What's going on, guys? Dan Watson, learningcameras.com. And you know, the LX100 has really been an interesting camera. It came out with a ton of new features, caused quite a stir. I mean, you're talking about things like a multi-aspect ratio sensor, up to 40 frames a second when you're shooting with the electronic sensor, 4K video recording, a nice looking well-built body, and just a bunch of things that made it look rather interesting to a camera. And plus, it's right on the heels of cameras like the Panasonic GH4, which also is a really amazing camera. So let's take a look in depth at this camera and see if it can deliver where it counts. Now, we will be posting the RAW files as well as some other stuff up at learningcameras.com. So take a look at the website and download those and see those for yourself. You can throw them into your whatever photo editor you use and manipulate those RAW files. Take a look at the low light tests and see if they do meet your expectations. But let's take a look at the hardware of this camera. I mean, overall, it's a very well-built body. It's small, compact enough. The grip is really nice. It definitely feels like a higher-end camera that you would be using. It's still a compact camera. It does have some size to it. It's not going to fit in your pocket or anything like that. But overall, it's a pretty well-built body. Unlike some Fuji cameras, the lens has an electronic zoom, which I just found slower and clunkier than many of the manual ones. You can change the zoom either with a dial on the top or the ring around the lens, but it responds so slowly, it's just difficult to adjust on the fly. And also, every time you power on the camera or go from the menu settings back into the camera, it seems to go back to its default, which is on the wide end of the zoom. So you're going to be missing out on any of your pictures that you're trying to take zoomed in, because it takes about 2 to 3 seconds to complete that task. Now, the retro design of the camera is pretty nice, but in practice, I just felt that this particular camera was a little bit clunkier to go from turning on to using. And some of the reasons for that is there's no mode dial, and so you're going to have an automatic mode on the top and an automatic mode on the aperture dial right here, and you're just going to need to make sure that all of those are set exactly how you want them to make sure that the mode is correct for what you're using. And also, while you do have third stops on the aperture, you do not on your shutter speed, so making adjustments back and forth can be a little clunky. Now, you can adjust that with the scroll wheel and other settings, but you can't do that via this dial right here. Now, your focus system does have 49 points. It's pretty much across the frame. The performance was really snappy, although I did have occasions where it focused on the background instead of my foreground image. And you know, when it comes to tracking, it's no worse than many of the other cameras, but it definitely doesn't hold its own to something like a DSLR. And if you're tracking an image coming for you or away from you, you're probably going to miss some of the images out there due to it being out of focus. Now, when it comes to video, 4K, 4K, 4K. That was the headline that drew all of our attentions, especially with the GH4 coming out not that long before. And we really felt that this might be a good second camera to use, or if you just needed some straight video quality. Sure, won't have all the video features, but this might offer some of the best performance we've seen from a camera of this size. And while that is true, the LX100 is missing some very, very important features. And the worst offender for me is the lack of a mic input. That means that you are forever limited to the built-in mics in this camera, which honestly for me, even for personal use, like recording my kid's birthday, is not good enough. I always want another mic on my camera. So despite its 4K recording, unless you're going to be syncing your files in post with the audio, it is really a big deal that there is no option for a higher quality mic on this camera for video shooters. You won't find any of the cine video modes at all either, so if you're trying to match GH4 footage, it might be a little bit difficult, but that's a little bit more accepting, and I'll let them off the hook for that one. However, another big thing is that this does not have a mode dial, and so your video settings are going to be whatever your photo settings are. And that means if you're using this camera a little bit more like a point and shoot, and you're going to be jumping from photos to video all the time, and you're shooting manual, you're going to be having to take your photo settings, readjust those, you know, change your shutter speed back to a 30th of a second or whatever, and set your video settings. Might take you about 10-20 seconds on that, and then take your video, and then you're going to have to jump back and change your photo settings. You can't just switch a mode dial into video and have your video settings separate from your photo settings. So every time you jump from video to photo, you're going to have some issues, and you don't have those custom modes built in easy access on the mode dial to be able to tune those in. You also don't have the ability to use auto ISO to be able to run up your exposure while recording. So, you know, there's just some limitations on this. So what I want to do is think of this a little bit more from the compact photo market or the compact camera market in recording video. And when you look at it that way, it is one of the best quality cameras that we can find in a compact camera. The 4K video looks great, no issues with that. Being able to record at 60 frames a second, 1080p is really nice. It has a processor of the GH4, just not quite any of the others. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that this camera has a full sensor readout, and so, you know, there is a little, what looks like line skipping going on, and we do have a little bit more artifacts than I did notice on the GH4, so it's not quite that quality on the image, but it's still the best that I've seen from your compact photo, except we don't have that mic input, which is huge with me, and you don't have those mode dials to be able to customize it. So for me, you know, the EOS M is just a nice compact camera to use. Still gives you your 1080p video, looks pretty good. Doesn't have quite as good focus, but at least I have the option of putting on something like a mic and making my audio sound good on that. So, you know, it's really good for what it is in the compact camera world. It's pretty cool to be able to shoot 4K video and 1080p slow-mo. However, it just falls short in so many areas to make it great. Overall, I had a tough time really enjoying the LX100. Sure, it has some great features, some build quality and things like that, but it just felt like there were a bunch of compromises, whether it was a low resolution sensor, some issues with the video recording, the electronic zoom, and just every good feature also had some negative drawbacks to it, and it ended up not being my favorite camera to use. Once again, download the RAW files at learningcameras.com. If you disagree with me at all, download those and take a look for yourself. If this looks like the camera for you, go ahead and pick it up. We do have links on the site, and anytime you use any of the links, it definitely helps to support the site, so we appreciate that when making your purchases. And you know, these are just my opinions from using the camera for a while and the other cameras I use. Once again, I encourage you to download those images, take a look for yourself, and if you're happy with it, get the camera. It's not that people are going to be really upset with this camera, it's just that it just didn't blow me away in the ways that I was hoping for. So, you know, thanks for watching, appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.